It is 4 o'clock and time to start today's work session. I'm calling the meeting to order, and can we do a roll call?
Mayor Harger?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Cooper?
Here.
Commissioner LaPiccolo?
Here.
Commissioner Oliver? Here. Commissioner Spiegler? Here. Commissioner Gilligan?
And Commissioner Gilligan is on her way here, so she'll be joining us here shortly. I do need to make some changes in today's agenda. We do have some special guests with us today from the FAI World Skydiving Championship, and unfortunately they're going to have to leave, so I'd like to move their presentation up to number 1.
So move.
Okay, I've got another addition to that. And because we've had some increased flooding concerns, especially around the Professional Park Drive, Commissioner Cooper would like for us to get an update on the Professional Park Drive area stormwater inventory and flood study, and I'd like to move that to number 8. Okay.
So move.
So we've got thank you. Any questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed have the same right. Thank you. All right, Chief Ray is going to introduce our guests today. We have an update on the ISC 2024 FAI World Skydiving Championship that Commissioner Cooper will be participating in, from what I understand.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Commissioners. I appreciate very much you moving this up on the agenda. Our guests, they do have to catch a plane. He'll be back out of here. I'd like to introduce John DiNuccio. John is with Paraclete XP up in Rayford, North Carolina, right outside Fayetteville. John is one of the hosts and participants of the competition. I know it's been on our town website for a year that this was coming, and it does begin on October 2nd. Everyone will start coming in. It'll run through the 12th, and I'm going to let John come up. He has a PowerPoint and any questions afterwards.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Welcome, John.
All right. So this is kind of last minute. Thank you for having me. I appreciate everybody having us out here. I think everybody kind of knows what we're doing now, but out at the airport in town, we're doing the World Championships of Skydiving. It'll be about 2 weeks long, so it's coming up. We just finished the Nationals of Skydiving in Chicago. There's about 600 competitors at that event, 600 to 700 competitors. So there'll be about 300 competitors at this event. It's a little bit smaller because only one team from each country in each event can go. So it's pretty much the best skydivers in the world showing up here. Everybody's been super helpful. I'm going to try and get this. You guys can have this PowerPoint. Like I said, they kind of made this on my way down here, so I haven't completely been through it yet. I didn't know we were going to have a PowerPoint, but the first one of these was done in 1951 in Yugoslavia. So they've been doing these. They do the World Championships every 2 years. You have to bid for it. And the way this one happened, it was really last minute. The airport board was super helpful getting it done, but it was supposed to be in Israel. I don't know if everybody could imagine how that would be going right now if we were in Israel right now. So they asked us to find a place to do it in the United States to put a bid in. The reason we're doing it here is because of how nice the area is. When you get out of an airplane here and you have all the backdrop of the water here, it's a little bit different than doing it in, say, Rayford, North Carolina. So it's just cornfields. And so that's kind of the whole reason we're doing it here. It's just an amazing place to do it. The town's great. So that's kind of why we chose this place to do it. So yeah, it's the 26th FAI World Formation Skydiving Championships, the 15th FAI World Artistic Events, the 5th FAI World Wingsuiting Event. So I think you guys have probably seen that on TV where you have the big suits. And then Speed Skydiving, the 5th one of those. We're doing this with another company called Skydive Chicago. They don't get here until a little bit later. The reason is they just had the Nationals. So they're hosting that and finishing that up, and then they'll start showing up. I get here full-time on the 27th, and then they get here like full-time on the 1st. And we'll really start setting the airport up and getting everything ready. Teams are already showing up. So the first team I think we had listed shows up on the 24th. They can't jump yet because we just don't have the facilities set up yet, but they're getting here just to kind of feel out the area and get used to it. The aims for the event obviously is to just crown the world champions in all those events. So once you win those specific events, you're the world champion of skydiving for the next 2 years. it also has the standings for the competition around the world, so it ranks you. You know, this sets all that. Promoting this is the schedule. September 29th is the first day that we're going to have it open for jumping. So I get here on the 27th. We got a team of people starting to set the airport up. The one thing about Jeff, I don't know if you guys know Jeff, and he owns Crystal Coast Skydiving Center out there. It's not really set up to do this type of event yet. He's more of like a tandem drop zone. So he does first timers and beginners, and so we're having to build the whole infrastructure of everything out there. You know, and we've been doing that. We're sending a ton of stuff down here to do it. So that will happen on the 29th. It'll be open for jumping. There'll be practice jumps going on then. Arrival for the judges is 2 through 4, so they should start showing up, doing practice stuff there. Official arrival day for competitors is the 4th. Official practice, the 5th, 7 to 4. Everybody has to make a practice jump in there just to make sure they're comfortable with the landing area. Opening ceremonies will be at the Havelock Center on the 5th as well, 5 to 7, which we'd love at Fort Macon, yeah. And we'd love to have the mayor show up there and speak if she could do that. That'd be great. October 6th is the first official day of competition jumps, and we have to be completely done by the 11th. So no matter what, if we get weather or anything like that, it doesn't matter. We have to be done on the 11th. 5 o'clock on the 11th, the last competition load can go. And then the 12th, we're offering some beach jumps to people coming from out of town, just to, if they want to kind of partake in that. And then departure day, everybody's leaving on the 12th. That's the official timeline there. Opening ceremonies, there'll be a parade of countries. They'll bring the flags in, escort each company in. Opening statements from the ISC president, national anthem. There'll be a flag jump. This is when we would like the mayor to talk. And then declaration of games open, competition draw, so there's a draw for the event that'll be handed out at the opening ceremonies as well, and then the competition's over. So if we get good weather the next morning, it'll just start. These are the countries that are represented. I think last we counted there's 24 countries coming, 310 competitors with probably another 100, support staff with each of those teams, between team managers and everything else. And then the part that's not really quantified is the families, especially from the United States. Like, it's a pretty big deal, so there's a ton of families and stuff coming as well. I don't know how we could really look at how many VRBOs and Airbnbs and hotel rooms we've rented, but it's probably pretty good. And then the closing ceremonies, we've moved it to Crystal Coast Civic Center. That's on the 11th, 7 to 10. That'll just be the awards and pretty much your basic closing ceremonies for the whole event. There'll be a presentation there from the Skydiving Hall of Fame. They're trying to build a Skydiving Hall of Fame right now, so they're bringing a bunch of gear through the years of jumping all the way back to when it started, so we have a pretty good setup there. Yeah, and then this is just the rest of that, and then sponsors. So that's the basics of it, and again, we really appreciate the town and the airport commission as well. We weren't sure we were going to be able to get it to happen, but it's happened, and we appreciate all the effort from everybody. Any questions about any of that?
Okay. Well, thank you, John. We'll go around and ask if the commissioners have any questions. When you guys were originally scouting for a new place, they've asked for me to write a letter of support to choose Beaufort, and I was glad to do so.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be a really good economic win for our area. I just want you guys to be safe out there, and I will be there on October to do the opening ceremony. But let's start with Commissioner Cooper. Let's see if he has any questions. Our first volunteer.
Yeah. First hand.
Let me just say the first and the last. You won't be after that, but glad you guys are going to be here. Now, the construction that's going on at the airport, has that all been worked out?
So I was just out there, so it's totally manageable how it is. There's a pretty big mound of dirt and some fencing. It's not going to affect us. It would obviously be nicer if that mound of dirt wasn't there, but I think the construction on the runway has been completed, and that wouldn't even affect us either, really, because there's the other runway. So I think we're all good there.
And what would be ours in terms of the skydiving? Because I know the airport not shutting down, so there's still the airspace that in terms of planes coming in to land, and then the airspace for Cherry Point. I'm sure that's all worked out as well.
Yeah, we have a NOTAM in place, so the skydiving operations, the nice thing and why skydiving works at airports is because it's directly over the airport, and most of the traffic is coming in from wherever. So it doesn't really affect the traffic. We will have an air boss out there the whole time kind of controlling it, but it shouldn't be an impact on the incoming and outgoing traffic, and we're going to do everything we can to not affect anybody.
Well, good luck with your program. Good
Thank
luck
you.
with it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Gilligan?
Yes, thank you. Can you please clarify what the beach jump is, and are there people like landing on nearby beaches and public lands, and have authorizations been gained to access those areas? Also wanted to ask about the infrastructure that is being built, and will that all be taken down at the end of the event? And that's it.
Yeah, the beach jump specifically. So during the competition, so leading up to it and the competition itself, everybody will be landing on the airport. There won't be any off. I mean, if there are off landings, which is a normal thing at events, not events, but any skydiving place. If somebody happens to land off, it for sure wouldn't be as far as the beach, hopefully. But if it is, we have a boat in place if it's water landings, and then we have somebody going to pick those people up if it's not. But then the beach jumps themselves, Jeff has a thing in place, and they designate an area, they bark it off, and then those people just land there, and then we pick them up and bring them straight back.
Commissioner, the beach jump is going to be at Pine Hill Shores. That's their land drop zone. That's where they're landing there, and they have an event planned for that.
Okay, good. That's comforting. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Commissioner Lopiccolo?
Yeah, well, first, thanks for coming out. I think this is going to be a neat event for the area and bring a lot of people in. Regarding tourism, are you encouraging people to come out to the airport for this, or are you discouraging discouraging people to come out? Because I know parking can be a difficult situation at the airport.
Yeah. So the two main concerns out of all this was parking and the bathrooms.
Mhm.
At the
That was my second
airport.
question. Yeah.
So we've kind of worked through the bathroom part. The parking for the competitors, we have a separate spot for that they worked out. We would love for people to come out and watch it, but the airport is going to have it where they're pretty much outside the fence. So they wanted to come too, but you won't really be allowed into the airport for it. So, but the nice thing about it is the skydiving park's pretty high. You can see it. So I think they want people to come out and see it, and I think there will be people there, but they won't actually let them through the fence. You have to kind of be on the outside. And so at other World Championships that are more like a private airport, even then they set up spectating areas. And just because there's a fence in between there, it doesn't matter. But there'll be a spectating area that you could set up chairs or whatever, and I think that's kind of how that will go. We'll kind of work through that the first couple of practice days and see who shows up and who doesn't, but they won't be allowed on the airport is kind of the main thing.
So you will have a security detail there of some sort to prevent people?
The airport's fenced in anyway, and then we have a parking person the whole time, so he's going to be parking people and telling them where to go and stuff.
Okay. It's somewhat porous, the airport, in some regard.
Yeah.
Sorry.
The airport it's secured by a fence, but there is access. People can walk
Yeah.
in and out. But will you have security preventing people from coming in, like tourists, from walking onto the tarmac?
The airport grounds, the fencing that goes through the FBO, the
Mhm.
fixed base operator, down all the way to the gates that you go through, those will be closed. There will be just maintained points of ingress
Mhm.
that was controlled by the parachute group and by the airport. You know, it has to be secured. You can't go past that fence which you see around.
Okay.
There would be spectators. They can be in the parking lot, or they can park at other areas over like Gallant Channel, places like that, and watch. John's assured me the actual competition happens before they pull the chutes. And there's gonna be like, close to a couple hundred parachuters per day. And then I think overall it's like 3,000,
It's a lot.
yeah, like 3,000 parachuters throughout the whole competition. So you'll be able to see a sky full of parachutes, but most of the competition actually happens before they pull the chute.
Yeah, these are all free fall events, so they happen in free fall. You still have to use a parachute, obviously, but Gallant Channel, the place he's talking about, we went over there. That'd be a perfect place if people want to go watch it. If you want to spread the rumor, but like what you're talking about, like when I went there today, that gate is open.
Mhm.
Like they're not gonna have. They've told me they're gonna close all those gates. So I don't
Okay.
think it'll be as porous as I don't think. Hopefully not.
And EMS, I imagine EMS will be there daily.
Yeah, we talked to EMS. We talked to the Coast Guard. So we pretty much have everything lined up.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. And
Yeah.
have
thanks
a
for
great
having
one.
us.
Yeah, thank you. Commissioner Spiegler?
Just want to say thank you for coming and sharing all this information, and have a safe and fun event.
Thank you.
Commissioner Oliver.
John, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have been involved at the airport, and my perception is that John has been an extremely professional in approaching this from a safety standpoint, and the airport has been fully behind it.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Well, we look forward to seeing you guys fall out the sky, I suppose, in the next couple of
That's not the
weeks.
exact term that they use.
What is it? Whatever it is that you do, but do it safely.
Yeah.
So the opening ceremony that's going to be at Fort Macon, will the commissioners here be able to come out and
We would love to have-
participate as well? So,
Yeah, so the one.
well, my choice of words is just being all tripped over here, but be able to participate in the opening ceremony.
We would
just-
love to have them there, for sure.
Okay. All right, just.
Our one constraint with the opening ceremonies is the Havelock Center has no lights. So we have to be done by whenever sunset is, which is about 7 o'clock.
Well, I don't necessarily mean they have anything to say per se, but just kind of show
Oh, yeah,
up
we would
to
love to have them
see
show
the
up.
event. Yeah. Mhm.
For sure.
Okay. All righty. Well, thank you very much, and
Yeah.
we're excited about the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chief Ray, for making sure everything remains safe.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Have a
It's been
safe trip
good.
travel back where you come from. All righty. Now we're going to move on to the food truck ordinance. And Charlie, who do we have to start that conversation?
Our planner, Michelle Eitner, is going to give you some background information on this and help lead us into the discussion. Michelle?
Good afternoon. I do not have a proposed draft ordinance today. I wanted to start this as a discussion and get a better idea of what leadership is interested in regulating before we dive in on any ordinance language. So I've kind of broken it up into two discernible different items, the where and the how of food trucks. What are we wanting to regulate as far as location? And then how are we wanting to regulate operation standards? Basically looking at what are the issues facing us with regard to food trucks to better understand how to fix those problems. So I've provided a couple of items in the memo just to identify some of the mechanisms that we can use. I've pulled from several other municipalities as well as my past experience with regulating food trucks to get an idea of some of the things that we can use to regulate, and then also looked at our existing itinerant merchant ordinance, which is in effect but not currently being used. So we have a lot that we can kind of mull through, but I just want to hear from the commissioners, what are we really looking to achieve with a food truck ordinance?
Okay. Well, we'll start with Commissioner Cooper.
Okay, great. I know the discussion that come up a while back in terms of generators was the being able to have ones that hardly, you can barely hear them.
Yes, sir.
And we also, in terms of where, what area, I wouldn't want them to be competing with, the restaurants, especially on Front Street. So I would like to see that we designate certain streets that they can park their trucks.
Okay. Do you think
And
it would
also
be-
hours of operation.
Okay, hours of operation. Do you think it would be appropriate to have a restriction on areas as well as a setback between food trucks and restaurants, or do you think that would be redundant? So if you say there's got to be 100 feet between a food truck and an open restaurant in
Open restaurant.
operation, do you think that protection needs to be observed in other parts of town, or are we just looking at making sure that kind of that historic district?
No, it could be other parts of town, because not only Front Street, you will have, like the trucks they're using now for, the watering hole, and the one that's right across the street from there, that came up, that one?
Periwinkle.
Yeah, Periwinkle, and then No Name Pizza.
Okay. Okay, so I have no competition, like a setback, and then also looking at restricting just Front Street or a greater area. just stick with Front Street for now?
No, I mean, I would like for it to cover the entire town, because like I said, there are other, restaurants that are separate from, from Front Street in terms of, there's not a cluster of them, especially on Live Oak.
That it would be appropriate to have food trucks on Live Oak, but not on Front Street.
I'll let you,
Okay, yes,
yeah.
no, this is.
Whatever you want to come back with, yeah.
Yeah, we'll come back and we'll keep mulling it through and having this this is more of a conversation. And this is really helpful. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Gilligan.
In terms of the geographic area, I want to be sensitive, really sensitive to businesses that are really small, like Freshies. Is that the name of the business,
Yes.
Freshies? Since that's a small business on, is it Queen? Which
It is
street
Queen.
is this? Queen Street. I want to be sensitive to that too. So not just considering downtown, other areas like Queen Street where small businesses are located, and Blackbeard's restaurant comes to mind, and as time goes on, we'll see other places pop up. I think the audio amplification would be a big issue for me. I don't see that with current food trucks, but I've seen it with food trucks out of our area. So certainly would not want music or some kind of megaphone or amplified calling people's names and order numbers or things like that. I wouldn't want to see that. I also am wondering what a drive-through food truck looks like. I've actually never experienced one, but I think I might have concerns about it. So my initial preference would be a walk-up food truck, but I don't want to say no until I understand more about what a drive-through looks like.
That is something I pulled from another municipality. So that is obviously somebody had a lesson learned there.
Yes.
It's not something that we've come in contact with, but I think it's something we would not want to come in contact with. So getting ahead of something like that.
Sure. Yeah, so I'd like to learn more about that. I mean, just my initial reaction is kind of a knee-jerk reaction, like, oh, that sounds a little bit scary. I agree with the trash disposal, so no use of town receptacles. I'm on board with our previous conversations about requiring plug-in power sources. I'm not sure how low of a decibel a generator can reach, but I've never heard one that is not disruptive in some way, shape, or form.
Yes, sir.
So those are just my initial thoughts.
Okay, we can always circle back. Commissioner Lo-Piccolo.
Yes, I guess I first want to start by asking, currently the town has some ordinances in place that do address food trucks, from what I understand. And I guess we'll probably try to build upon that. So I don't know if there's any way we can have that available and brought up so that the commissioners can view that, and that we can kind of look at those specific definitions that are currently in place.
And we've got chapter 113, the itinerant merchants. It identifies, it was set out in the 80s. It identifies a lot of different mechanisms of business. It kind of predates the modern food truck, so I think that we would at the very least need to amend it. It also references a permitting program for a 90-day permit submitted to the town clerk and issued by the tax collector, which is not somebody we have on staff anymore.
Oh, yeah.
So you can tell it's been at least 10 years since we've had this in play.
Right.
So
So we probably need to address this and revise this and,
Yeah.
and kind of,
so there's kind of two ways to go about it. One would be to do some pretty heavy amendments to this section, or to do a full repeal and replace. Either way, you're getting what needs to be in that ordinance put in. It just depends on how much of it existing you want to carry forward.
right. But based on this right now, currently, there's no, food trucks really, if you read this the way it is, are not allowed on public streets, correct?
I think that's something that we do need to identify whether or not we want to allow. because I think that's one of the big questions that spurred a lot of this conversation is whether or not they're allowed on the public right-of-way, and what that policy decision really needs to be. And so all of the regulations that I've got kind of proposed are with regard to private property, but I think the discussion for right-of-way, parks, that sort of thing needs to be discussed. Now, I am proposing some pretty heavy exemptions for town events, special events like when you use a food truck for catering, things like that. So I've got some exemptions that are going to take care of a good balance of when the town uses food trucks for events. But just, keeping in mind that is something I think that needs to get addressed as far as parking spaces being used for food trucks. Now, if we've got that setback from food truck in operation to restaurant in operation or other food truck in operation, I think that that's going to pan that out quite a bit. But that still leaves the question, if they pay for parking, can they have the food truck there? Is that something we want to continue?
I personally have problems with food trucks on public streets and roads. I think it's going to be very difficult to get compliance or agreement from possibly different owner operators, and then we'll have to then put it out to this restaurant or that business and so forth, and have that have some kind of consensus. And I think it gets very difficult in that regard to put it out that way. I would consider also the zoning and food trucks in certain zoning, but I do also want to make sure that private homeowners have the ability to have a food truck on their property if they have an event. So I don't want to restrict that in that regard, because some people do use food trucks for maybe a wedding on their in their home or some other type of event where they're not selling food to the community, but they're using for their personal uses.
And that's the final bullet point on my memo page, and I want to make sure, I'll make sure with legal that that's going to cover what we're trying to achieve. But basically, when they're not going for public, they're not open for public business, that kind of thing. And I was seeing that in a lot of the other regulations where that's an exemption that's provided. If you're using catering for a special event or a wedding or a realtor open house or something like that, they're not necessarily open for business, they're providing a service. So I think that that's something that we'll make sure to have on the exemptions.
I also feel that if there's a business owner that has a piece of property and they currently have a business on that property, or they're able to have a food truck there, I don't think we should be able to limit the number of food trucks if they have proper things in place. I do believe that we need to have items such as power sources for these food trucks, so they're not running a generator, so we can reduce the noise, that they're cleaning up any garbage and trash and so forth that the food trucks may produce. For events, I think if for recurrent events on these for food trucks, I believe we should probably have an application for that, maybe with a 1-year permit, so that if there are recurrent events, say at the farmer's market and so forth, that we can kind of keep track of that and kind of make sure that we're not just giving a carte blanche permit or okay for that, because I think things do change over time, and it's important to revisit our ordinances and our rules and regulations. As Commissioner Gilligan said, I'm not really sure about those drive-through food trucks. I'd like to see a drive-through food truck. It sounds interesting to me. And then obviously we definitely want to have the health department, fire marshal, and so forth in place to make sure that they're safe. So I think that's about all
What I'm proposing for that is to be independent from those and say, you need to make sure that you're correct with the health department, the fire marshal, everything else. These ordinances are independent from those. So if a food truck hasn't gotten all their proper permitting and everything, that doesn't necessarily hinge on our enforcement.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is the only question. When you spoke about farmers market and food trucks there, are you wanting to include them into the food truck into this regulation, or still allow the farmers markets to have they say something in terms of the food trucks that are out there, because They use a couple of them out there now.
Yeah, I think something like a recurrent event, I think be able to have that. At least I would think that they would be able to have that. But I think having a year permit to basically create a way that we can understand that that event is going to be held, and because it may not be held in perpetuity, with the word. We want to make sure that we're kind of keeping track of that event, or maybe another event that may be occurring in town. We don't want to give special favors to just one particular event. There may be other ones in town that happen, like maybe a softball event that happens every year, or something of that nature, that happens weekly and so forth, that we want to make, that wants to have a food truck there. If
But
they
you
want
do
to have
have
that, I
it
think
here.
having some type of permit to understand that would be best.
I have proposed in the exemptions that special events with the town, Old Beaufort Farmers Market, those recurring special events, they would be separate from these location and operation standards. So we wouldn't be undercutting any of the food trucks that serve at the farmers market or anything like that. Those would be kind of tucked over as the exemption, because we're really looking to regulate food trucks that are serving as business, not that are providing service at those events. So making sure that, you know, we've got Mardi Gras, Pirate Invasion, any of the other town events or events that are put on by any other, you know, government entity or that we give blessing to, and then recurring events like the farmers market, anything else that I'm not going to be aware of, where we want to make sure that they're continuing to be able to have those. Not each and every one of those vendors has to get permitting for that, because they're under that blanket umbrella. That would kind of be the easiest way to do it, just to let them handle their food trucks. And we're really looking more to handle food trucks that are happening outside of those event spaces.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, now we're going to make it down here. Commissioner Spiegler.
Michelle, I just want to say thank you, first of all. It's really nice to be able to hear from you and give input before we get to this decision-making process, so thank you. I hear sort of the two sides to this. I do want to say I think that we should find a balance. I hear the importance of protecting our small businesses and restaurants, and obviously parking, especially on Front Street, is a challenge. However, I do think there should be a balance. I think food trucks can provide a service to both our residents and visitors, even not during special events. We have some amazing restaurants in town. We don't always have restaurants that are great for people with maybe who are more strapped in their income, or even people like me who can't afford to eat out here all the time at our amazing restaurants. And I personally would like to have, you know, some more options that I can afford on a more regular basis. And I do think that food trucks can serve that in some ways. Again, finding a balance I think is important. We don't need them parked along Front Street where, you know, we can't even drive around them, right? Like, that's not feasible. But I personally wouldn't want to say no food trucks anywhere. I like food trucks. I don't know exactly what a drive-through food truck is, but I will say, you know, the food truck that would often be at the old former watering hole. So I have noticed that you could drive through the parking lot, and if you didn't really want to get out of your car, you could kind of stop, which for someone like me who has a small child who's really hard to wrangle, especially in a parking lot, that's actually kind of a nice option. I don't know if that's what a drive-through food truck is, but I mean, in that location, I don't see what the issue would be. Now, if it was on Front Street, that would cause chaos, right? But like in a parking lot like that, where it's really large and you can drive through, I don't necessarily see a problem with that, unless there's a safety issue, then I understand that. I think that was, let me see if I had anything else. I will go back to when we had the special use request. I also, as everybody probably remembers, am not fond of the really noisy generators, so I would want to make sure that we limit that as much as possible. I think that's about it that I've got right now. Thanks.
Okay.
And I agree, food trucks provide a lot of variety, and they can rotate out, so you can get, you know, a Thai food truck, a waffle truck, you know, a lot of different kinds of options that provide a little bit of flair in addition to our established restaurants. And if you think about, you know, a dinner service, you're gonna get maybe 3 turns, 4 turns at a table. How many people can get served at a restaurant? We've got a lot of people in Beaufort. We might have overflow, and we might not be disadvantaging those established restaurants as much as we could possibly think with a food truck. Because if I want to eat at Clausen's, I'm going to eat at Clausen's. I'm not going to eat taco truck. You know, but somebody might be, oh, there's a 40-minute wait, I'm just going to get a taco. It really could go either way. And I think that there's, you know, there could be a lot of options. I don't think that a distance from those established restaurants is a bad idea. I think that helps to protect them and provide a little bit more space and buffer, even to kind of like shoulder and expand the area. So that may also benefit to provide an additional walking space for folks. But glad we're all in agreement on the generators.
Okay. One agreement down. Commissioner Oliver.
Michelle, you've got an interesting subject here. Am I correct in understanding that today we say that any publicly owned or controlled highway, street, alley right-of-way, or publicly owned or publicly controlled properties within the town cannot have vending? Is that a current existing ordinance?
Apparently so. There are a couple of ordinances within the business regulations that are not currently observed. We've still got privilege licenses in there, and the state took those out, and we also have some, just some other various things that need to get cleaned up in this. So I think that we could fell swoop hit the whole business regulations section, as well as update the itinerant merchants that frankly isn't being used. And I think that it doesn't really identify who's responsible for that section, and that's why it's fallen through the cracks. And some of the things,
I see it under prohibited conduct, section 113.03.
yes, sir.
So I think what you're asking is, in essence, do we want to amend and change that existing ordinance?
Yes.
Am I correct in that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I think that's a relatively big ask. I'm not saying I'm for or against it, but I think we need to focus on the existing reg, what it says, what it does, what it means, and start from that point. Notwithstanding that, there are some issues. One is the relative capital investment of bricks and mortar facilities, whether they're small, big, or whatever, the limited capacity of those versus demand, and obviously the competing restaurant thing that you talk about, and I know, for instance, if I were involved in Clausen's, and I don't think I'd want to have a food truck parked on Front Street in front of my restaurant. Obviously, the power, trash, noise, health, fire marshal, insurance, those boxes all have to be somehow either required, delegated, but observed. We have the employee pickups driving around serving coffee at work sites. I guess you could call that it's a truck and it serves food, so I guess it's a food truck. It's a basket full of things to work through. I don't think I've answered your questions very exactly, but I'm trying to at least make sure that we include all of the topics that have been, that are being asked.
And finding the balance for those topics, I think absolutely. But starting with our current regulations, we'll definitely work through those. I know that it can be a little bit touchy when you, Jacksonville had some issues with food trucks a couple years ago because they had some very restrictive regulations, and the food trucks found issue with that. And I wish Ari was here because he could kind of opine on that a little bit more. But basically, I think City of Jacksonville was prioritizing brick and mortar over food trucks because of the tax income, and food trucks found issue with that. So I don't want to get us into any trouble. I'm always looking at ordinances with legal defensibility. I like Ari, but I don't want to give him more work. So kind of looking at it from that point of view, but I think everything that I'm hearing is not out of character for what is being regulated typically. I've looked at, Morehead City and New Bern and other cities kind of in our area, and it all seems in keeping with what they're regulating and I don't want to say getting away with, but what they're enforcing and what we're looking to enforce as well.
I will say, in due respect and with a smile on my face, just because others do it, Beaufort does not have any, Beaufort is special, and we need to keep it that way, whether it's this subject or any other. The other question that you mentioned, which stirred something in my mind, was sales tax. I think any sales that are generated, we need to make damn sure that that sales revenue ends up back reported in our community, not in the community necessarily where the truck lives the rest of the time. So
I can
that
look into that. I'm
you
not sure how that
so you
works.
stirred up another
I
little
was thinking
question.
more property taxes.
Well, I'm thinking about sales tax too.
Mm-hmm.
Supplies a big part of our budget.
Yes.
So, good luck.
Thank you, sir.
And I just want to say something else. I agree with Commissioner Spiegler. It's really important to have, that lower price point, which is great, and it really helps. I know I use it quite a bit, and my family uses quite a bit. But I think it's really nice that the town, we even right now have a hybrid with food trucks downtown. We have business owners who have food trucks on their property right now, whether it be the Admiral or sometimes you'll even see them on Middle Lane at 321. So we've kind of solved that in some ways, even without even touching it. There are food trucks downtown, even abiding by the rules and regs of not allowing it on public streets. So, we can kind of keep ourselves, from stepping into something and creating an issue by just kind of maintaining some of the rules and regs that we have right now regarding where those are allowed. We already have business owners and restaurateurs who are filling that void. I don't know what the huge demand or need is right now to allow them on public streets. And I want to be sensitive not just downtown, but also to places, in town where there are restaurants, so that people aren't just setting up food trucks in front of Blackbeard's and some of the other places in town. So it's not just about downtown, it's about the entire community.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Commissioner Gilligan, you have a follow-up?
Yes.
Okay.
So, sorry to be negative, Nancy, but I'm always thinking about hurricanes and post-disaster operations around town. In a designated disaster, I don't know if our ordinances, something happens with our ordinances that a lot of them change or enforcement, but I would like to make sure that food trucks may have some exceptions during periods of declared disasters where maybe they could use generators. If they could be providing a service to our citizens
Critical.
who don't have generators and everything is spoiled in their house and they need to get some fresh food, I would like to see what the option might be for that.
We could certainly look at an exemption for that.
It's a good idea. Because with Florence, they did come down. Red Cross came down. We even had Frank's coming around giving out hot dogs. And you knew that they were going to have some power generators. And I don't think anybody cared about the noise at that time. They were
Absolutely.
looking for something hot to eat for the first time in a few days. It's a good idea. Any other thing for Michelle to ponder? She's got another 5 minutes, right?
Just thank you, Michelle.
Yes,
All right.
absolutely.
All right,
Thank you.
all right, appreciate it. We'll look forward to hearing what you come up with.
Yes, thanks.
All right. Now we're going to move on to the amendment to the ordinance, section 71.07, and the addition to the ordinance, section 90.12. And do we have Chief Burdette on
Chief
that one?
Burdette.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Board.
Chief?
Come to you with a request to amend one ordinance and the addition of another. The first ordinance we're going to talk about is the trailers on streets, and it almost kind of dovetails off of Michelle's presentation, because whatever we come up with the food truck ordinance, a lot of food trucks are actual pulled trailers behind, and that was one of the decision points with whether we should enforce or not when this dialogue first came up with the food truck that's in front of the farmer's market, as well as the one that was in front of Fishtown, because that was an unattached trailer. The first amendment for the trailer is really just to clean up language. It's been enforced a little bit differently based on the philosophy of current town administration. It doesn't delineate or differentiate between whether it's an attached trailer or if it's just unattached, freestanding by itself. So the requested amendment that you have in front of you just includes a trailer in general, whether it's attached or unattached.
Okay. All right, let's see if we have any questions for the chief. We'll start with Commissioner Cooper.
Gee. Let me come back.
Okay.
Go to,
All right, just remind me. Commissioner
Yes.
Gillikin?
So this applies to all streets throughout the town.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. That's my only question.
All righty. Commissioner LoPiccolo?
I have a question regarding specifics. Is this considered for public streets or public right-of-way? Because a lot of our streets are basically, people can park adjacent to the street, or half the trailer may be on the street and they're on the grassy area, which is basically public right-of-way. Does that include, that's a street parking as well, or is it on the?
It would be for on the streets.
Okay. So if someone's pulling it on their driveway and they're crossing over sidewalks, is that also considered on the public street?
No, that would be blocking a sidewalk. That would be a separate
Separate
issue
entry.
that we would
Okay.
need to address. And
What-
the impetus behind this was
Right away.
the premium that's been placed on parking. That's where the dialogues come from, because trucks with large trailers, they consume a lot of parking spaces. So that's where this comes from.
Okay.
Okay. Commissioner Cooper, do you still want me to come back to you?
yes.
Okay.
So, Chief, when you're saying, large trucks, so I know I've seen him walking early mornings, a lot of construction guys that, bring up their trailers and their work trailer, more or less, to do the job. So would they be in reference to this ordinance?
No, the philosophy's been, people actively working on job sites with trailers would not be in violation of that.
Okay. How about boats? People who have, boat trailers and park them out on the curb.
No, those would be prohibited.
That
Those would be prohibited,
would be prohibited?
yes.
Does it say so adequately clearly, those exceptions?
Which exceptions?
Well, you just mentioned two, one that was and one that wasn't. In your opinion, does the draft address those specifically?
No, it doesn't address those specifically. That's the enforcement model that we deploy.
I may have some concern in terms of boat trailers there, Chief. Could you respond on it maybe just, because I could see, an individual, took the boat down somewhere, launched it and then come back, and rather than, say, putting it back in the yard, they put it there on the curb, maybe in front of their residence. Would that would be prohibited?
Yes, if it's gonna remain parked. If it's still attached, as this draft ordinance is written, it could be parked there for up to 1 hour.
Up to just 1 hour?
Yes, sir. again, this was just to clean up ambiguous language that was in the original ordinance. If you'd like the ordinance to read differently, we're happy to, consult with the town attorney, and I'm happy to take back any suggestions that you have as a board
Okay,
to rewrite the ordinance.
all righty. I'm going to move on to Commissioner Spiegler.
My question might be similar. So this is cleaning up language, but was there an event that precipitated this specifically, or?
Just asking for clarification on what the administration's philosophy would be on, just to give guidance to my staff, because it's been looked at both ways, both attached trailers and unattached trailers.
So, okay, that's helpful, thank you. It seems like right now,
Yeah, the current one is just says trailers.
Mm-hmm.
right,
Doesn't differentiate.
but so it seems like when you drive around town right now, there are a lot of people that park their boats on the street for more than 1 hour, often overnight. So I'm thinking about my neighborhood. We have somebody whose boat doesn't fit in their driveway, so they park it on the street both while they're cleaning it, and then they live in Raleigh, I think, so they're usually just there for the weekend. And there's not a parking problem in my neighborhood.
Mhm.
So what would they do with their boat in that case?
They could seek storage yards, find other arrangements.
So we're gonna have a lot of people that all of a sudden in our town are gonna have to seek other arrangements. I can just see that those people are not gonna be very pleased when today they can put their boat on the street and tomorrow they can't. So that's a big change. I think I understand, like,
I think it already exists. That already exists.
The ordinance already exists, it's not a change.
It's not a change.
It's just
Okay.
clarifying the actual written language to
so it's just not
define-
enforced right now is what you're saying?
But no, it is enforced.
Okay.
It's just we generally get repeat offenders.
Okay.
from
Usually,
time to
I
time.
would imagine things are enforced when there's complaints.
Okay.
Yes, the majority of this is complaint driven.
All right.
Okay.
Which is what most of these ordinances are.
Yes,
I mean,
ma'am.
you don't go around and trail the whole entire streets looking for these things. Most
Correct.
likely they're reported. Then you'll have something in your hand to say how you can enforce it or not.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay, well, I did not know that, so that's good for me to know. And so you want to clarify with the 1 hour, that's not in there right now?
No, the 1 hour is in there.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, the clarifying language is just to include both attached and unattached trailers.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Commissioner Oliver.
I don't have any questions.
Don't know if we provided you with much guidance.
Can I make another comment?
Sure, please do.
Would it be helpful for you, Chief Burdette, to have the language in there about a vehicle that has a trailer and they're actively working on a job site, or has it worked well having that as an internal PD policy?
Yeah, it has worked well being an internal policy, but there's no objections to adding that language in the ordinance if you wish.
Okay.
And Paula, if you actually read it, I don't mean to say that insultingly, it says to an automobile. A truck is not an automobile. So if you own a pickup truck, you can do it.
Oh, boy.
If you own a semi, you can do it. It says automobile.
Oh,
I mean, it's just,
okay.
and that's where they're getting, I think that's where they're getting their interpretation.
Well, it's
I
really
think
getting
it's a
into
little
the weeds.
loosey-goosey, frankly, but that's what it says, and I, not saying I cherish that idea, but that's what it says. And I think they went through the trailer thing, unattached to about 5 or 6 years. You did that back when you were sitting as a commissioner and got through that and went through hell for unattached trailers. They caught hell, but they don't enforce everywhere either.
Well, the trailers being unattached, just sitting out there on the roadway was an issue. It
Right.
had been an issue, and
And
that's
you
what we
changed
had to, yes. And that's what we had to address. There was no boats attached to it, there was no idea. They were just sitting everywhere. Where the boat went or anything else, and it had nothing to do with a boat necessarily, it was an unattached trailer.
Yes,
So we didn't want to get into the semantics of what kind of trailer. It's just anything, nothing attached to it, because they were being parked all over the place.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you say
And
vote for a special that you said?
yeah, this is one of the reasons why. But, you know, but it did become a problem when we had the old Homes Tour. We had people that were detached trailers there, and people were trying to park, particularly on Ann Street, very narrow, making that road go into even more of a diet where you couldn't get back and forth. And higher traffic activities, it may not make an impact in the communities that are a little further away, and the roads were a little bigger, but it does make an impact when you're in smaller areas downtown. Parking and navigability of driving back and forth. And I don't think it makes much of a difference whether a car's attached to it or not. It's still blocking the road. But they could have the intentions of moving it, so you just don't know. But some of them were overnight, and that's when enforcement came in. People called, but you didn't have much of a leg to stand on when they did call.
Right.
That's the problem.
So you're just asking us to review this and then at our meeting next month, place it on for approval?
Yes, sir.
Well, are we providing you with any guidance here? Because I wouldn't put it on the consent agenda unless you have enough with what you need, unless we need to discuss this any further.
Well, I
No.
would,
I'm just talking to them. Don't worry about it.
Can I just
That wasn't
get
a
some?
question for you.
It wasn't a question for you. But thank you for wanting to answer, because they're not. Clearly, they're not answering me.
Another other thing I'd say is $50 is pretty cheap in honesty. So I kind of worry about the $50 really gives you much of an incentive. I bet there are a lot of people that pay $50 to not have to go move a trailer again. But again, it's just,
Yeah, might well
But this
put
is
it-
per day though, right?
it's per offense.
Per offense,
yeah. So everybody has to come back, yeah, right.
$50 a day.
So every hour on the hour, we can give it,
That's
if
what
you're
it
not
says.
moved.
And I don't want to get in the weeds here, but just go back to the point that Commissioner Oliver made about regarding automobile. So is that how you would read it, if it's
I
attached
can
to
reach
it?
back out to the town attorney, and we could easily replace that word with vehicle.
Okay,
Okay.
please do.
Yeah, I
Now,
don't-
if
Yeah.
you change it to a vehicle, then you walk back into Paula's problem that the guy hauling the steel to the construction site can only do it for an hour.
But there, we have an
That's a
internal,
vehicle attached to a trailer.
we have an internal policy about it that you're not gonna write a ticket for that if we have the internal policy.
Right. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I think if we clarify the automobile language, I mean, I'd be okay with making this clarification. We've got a lot of big things we're working on right now, and I think in the relative scheme of things, we probably shouldn't spend too much time on this one.
I
And then
agree
again-
completely with that motion.
I think it's important to highlight again, my philosophy has always been education over enforcement. This has never been a controversial issue when communications happened.
So to clarify, we'll
Let's fight-
update the
let's
language
fight
of
over it.
automobiles to vehicles,
Yes, ma'am.
and then have trailers, whether it's attached or unattached.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
The second ordinance, this was brought to my attention from the former town manager. We received some complaints in segments of Beaufort with folks essentially camping. Camping is currently only addressed in our ordinance under the parks rules where it says no camping. And as far as a pervasive issue, this is not one. This is an effort to try to get in front of something that could potentially become an issue. And just to highlight, it was just a matter of 3 or 4 weeks ago, we had somebody with a travel trailer that pulled at the corner of Marsh and Broad, put their stabilizers out, put their slide outs, and put cones, and they were going to be here for the weekend. So, you know, again, there's the potential is there, and this is something to get ahead of.
Okay. Well, let's see if anybody has any questions for you or comments about that particular ordinance. We'll start with Commissioner Cooper.
Okay, living or sleeping on streets. Come back to me again.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gilligan.
So I'm a drowsy driver, and a lot of times, like, I'll stop in different towns, and when I have my dog in the car with me, it makes me feel comfortable enough to, like, kick back and take a nap on the town street, just to kind of regain my clarity so I could drive again. Would that apply to that situation? This apply to that situation?
No, it would not. And
Okay.
the investigation that happens, again, these ordinances they're going to be complaint driven, and based on the circumstances in each specific instance, that's going to determine whether somebody's actively in, for the spirit of the ordinances as far as camping is concerned.
Okay, good deal. Also wondering if there have been any complaints about homeless people. Like, I want to make sure that we are reaching out to the appropriate nonprofits and trying to get people well resourced if we're seeing like a homeless issue pop up.
Right.
And I don't want to, throw someone out on another street in another town because we have an ordinance that may not be helpful for them. So I'm wondering if I have seen some homeless people sleeping in places around Beaufort Square. I don't even know if that would apply since this is not in a vehicle, not on town street. But what are your thoughts on that, or what is your experience with those types of complaints?
This was part of the discussion in working with the town attorney and trying to craft an ordinance that was reasonable. This is not an attempt to try to criminalize homelessness. To that point, with Senate Bill 300, you could actually criminalize any violation of an ordinance, and we specifically left that provision out. So this is purely a civil violation. We do have resources for homeless individuals when we do come across them, and again, I can only highlight the education over enforcement piece of how we approach ordinance violations, and in seeking the appropriate help and resources for folks when we come across them.
Mm-hmm. Do you already have an internal policy that addresses this in any way?
With regards to the homeless population?
With people sleeping in vehicles?
The way we currently do have an ordinance that says no overnight parking, which
Right.
That's only enforceable if it's properly posted with signs,
Right.
signage. And when we approached, it may have been a little over a year ago, we don't want to go that route with an overnight parking because, again, safety and being realistic, we do have establishments that sell alcohol, and we don't want to penalize somebody for leaving their vehicle down here and finding an alternative ride home. So that's why you don't see those signs on Front Street. But there's no way we can enforce somebody just sleeping in their car. Not that we need to enforce sleeping in a car, but again, the spirit behind this ordinance was the bona fide camping. We had folks that had laundry hanging on strings. They were clearly here, living, eating, sleeping out of their vehicle for an extended period of time on the street.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Commissioner Lo-Piccolo.
No, I have no questions. I just want to reiterate that I think this is in the spirit of really trying to avoid problems with homeowners in our community and people who do kind of pull up RVs and try to live in front of their homes and can create problems and garbage and mess and so forth. And I've seen it on Front Street. I've seen it on Turner Street also. I've seen it on Cedar Street as well. So it's there, and it would be nice if a homeowner is having an issue with something like that we do have the means to enforce, to make those people move from those locations. So.
I ain't seen nothing on Cedar Street.
You don't run at 5 in the morning.
No, I don't.
There's a reason for that. Commissioner Spiegler?
I don't have any questions. I just second what Commissioner Gillikin said.
Okay. Commissioner Oliver?
The only picky thing that I have with this, in paragraph A, I think the first two sentences are mutually exclusive of one another. And I think your intent, frankly, is really sentence number 2. I think sentence number 1, frankly, would prohibit Paul from taking a snooze in their car. I think those two are mutually exclusive and not necessarily headed for the same intent. So I would ask those who are legally qualified to review that.
Okay.
Okay. So in this particular ordinance about sleeping on the street, you would like to have ARI review that again, particularly when it comes down to living or sleeping on the streets, is what you're saying?
Well, personally, my only concern is the first sentence and the second sentence in paragraph A. I think they could be interpreted to be mutually exclusive one from the other. And I don't think that's your intent, Paul. So, I think what you're saying is you're fine to have somebody who may be impaired take a nap in their car, but you don't want them to put a tent and erect a place and hang out laundry. And so I think those two sentences oppose one another. I think they address two separate issues.
Okay.
So there should be an exception, I guess, is what we're looking at. You can have one thing, but if somebody, well, I think Paul is kind of saying that's an internal policy too.
Yeah, and however you want it to read, that's at the pleasure of the board.
Okay.
And this was just the draft that Jill and Ari have constructed based off of current Supreme Court ruling.
So are you asking Commissioner Oliver to remove that first sentence? Because I think that would then create some difficulty with the police department with being able to regulate RVs and so forth.
I think it's just a different definition of sleeping than we're used to. I really don't think it means taking a nap. I don't think that's the purpose, but that's how it reads.
Chief, in that very first sentence, property owned by the town. For us on Cedar Street, at the very end where it used to be the old bridge, from time to time, I know vehicles do park there, and sometimes they're there for 3-4 days. Would that be a violation?
That's not owned by the town.
So that person can stay there?
Yes, sir.
That's right.
Is there any language that we could possibly, is that considered private property?
It's owned by the state.
State property.
I mean, it's not something we could regulate by ordinance, by our ordinance.
It's state property.
I don't know. I thought the state, I don't know.
All right, so it's just town property. I think we should probably take some of this back to ARI and kind of clean that up to make sure that we're all on the same page. Just for those here in the audience, it was driven by a complaint, very much to what you're saying, where someone is parking in front of your house, and the van life has become extremely popular, and I can understand people wanting to cluster where they feel like it's safe. They'll park in front of Melvin's house because he seems like a nice guy, but do you want them there overnight, 2 nights, 3 nights, so on and so forth? It becomes a safety concern because you don't know who that person is and what's going on activity-wise, which is what the complaint that was originally driven was like, I don't know who these people are, and they're there for a couple of days. And outside of doing laundry, it was just very concerning. So I think it's something that we need to consider as people look for safe harbor when they try to park their car and stay, more so than just taking a nap because you're drowsy. And I'm surprised that most of them don't seem to go to bigger places like a Food Line parking lot or Piggly Wiggly parking lot in order to be a little bit more visible, but that's just me. I don't know what a drive-in food truck is, and I don't know why they park on the street. But I think we probably need to come back to this, and we can bring it up for discussion at our next meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. But I want to circle back with whether to put the consent agenda for the trailer. If everybody is on board with that, we can add that to the consent agenda? Okay. All righty. All righty. I think that is it. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Appreciate your time. All right, now we're going to move on to Dock Master Office Lease Extension.
And Assistant Manager Lewis will take care of this one for us.
All righty.
Thank you. Ari actually brought this to our attention, legal. So as you recall, last year we did a property swap with Beaufort Waterfront Enterprise where the town acquired the dock master lease space for some boardwalk covered area. That is actually a separate lease. So because we extended the dock lease for another year, this lease needs to be extended as well.
Okay, very good. Okay, let's see if anybody has any questions for you. Commissioner Cooper?
None.
Thank you. Commissioner Gilligan?
No questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Piccolo?
No questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Spiegler?
Elizabeth, do you know when the date was that that property swap occurred?
I don't know that date off the top of my head.
Okay, that's okay, thanks.
I can check for you.
Okay.
Okay. But this lease will end December 31st of 2025?
Yes, it's
Okay.
concurrent with the dock lease.
All right.
And Mayor, if we could get action on that tonight, that would be great.
Yes, I'm leading that way. Commissioner Oliver, any
I
questions?
have no questions.
All righty. As you already heard, we need to have some action taken on this, and can I get a motion to either approve this, or if you have any further questions, let me know.
I move that we move to go ahead on the consent as is.
Okay, so I've got a motion to approve the attached lease extension. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed have the same right. Thank you very much. Town manager residency requirement. I'll let Charlie take over on that one unless you want me to.
It doesn't
Okay.
matter. The issue at hand is whether to include or not include in your recruitment to require a manager to reside within the town limits. And I've had discussions with some of you and with staff as well. And my comments to the mayor have been, you can always put it in, that it is required, and if it becomes an issue somewhere out there in the negotiation process, you can always take it back out. But I have professional feelings towards this as far as the individual that effectively proposes tax rates and ordinances and other regulatory aspects, as well as service delivery to a town, to a municipality. I personally and professionally believe should reside. I think there's two individuals in a government such as Beaufort's that should live within the town limits. That would be the manager and the planner. The planner's telling folks how they can use their property and such, and I think that person should be there too. They speak from a better position, but that's, I guess, my opening comment to get your discussion started.
Okay. Well, thank you. Commissioner Cooper?
I didn't know that it was not already on the books that the town manager had to reside in. I mean, that we had that on for Manager Clark.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would be in favor that the town manager live within the city limits of an incorporated town.
Okay. Commissioner Gilligan?
No questions, but I agree for all the reasons that Charlie articulated. In addition, it's a good optic.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Commissioner Piccolo?
No questions. I agree with
All right.
Charlie on that as well.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Spiegler?
Thank you, Charlie. I also agree. I think my one question would be, and maybe this is for the board, when we say town limits, do we mean town of Beaufort, or could we also include the ETJ? Maybe just something to think about. But I do agree with Charlie. I think it's good, at least in the beginning, to live in town,
Mm-hmm.
in the negotiations at least.
Thank you. Commissioner Oliver?
I agree with Commissioner Spiegler.
Okay. All righty, so we'll just let the developmental associates, the search firm, know that that would be a requirement for the applicant. But it was just definitely brought up because of the prices of houses in the area. We wanted to make sure they knew what they were stepping into when they applied. So we wanted to clean that up, and there's a few other things we'd like to clean up too with this.
Yes, sent an email out to each of you last week relative to the meetings that we need to schedule with developmental associates, and the ones in question, I guess, for us to talk about is the October 15th and October 30th meetings. The October 15th meeting, both of these meetings will be virtual. The first one will last about 1 hour. The second one will last, the October 30th meeting will last about 90 minutes. I did hear from Commissioner Lopiccolo, who suggested maybe and I don't mean to speak for you, but a 4 or 5 p.m. The developmental associates is open to whatever time you pick. They said as long as it's before midnight, they're good. So you have a pretty open slate. If those two dates, the 15th and the 30th, are not good for the entire board, then we can slide a day one way or the other with those particular two meetings. But open it up for you folks to decide a time.
All right. Commissioner Cooper, is the 15th of October and the 30th of October an open date for you? And if a time is specific, what would you prefer? We've got 4 o'clock, after 4 on the table.
They're good.
Okay,
Either way, 4 p.m.
4 p.m. so far. And Commissioner Gilligan?
So for the 15th, later 4 p.m. would work for me.
Okay.
And for the 30th, that would also work.
All right. Now, keep in mind, these are virtual. And Commissioner Lopiccolo, same
So
for
they
you.
can be held virtual as well.
Yes.
Later in the day is always best for me,
Same.
especially on Wednesdays because I'm further out of town. But if we could do a 5 o'clock, that would be best.
I prefer 4 p.m.
4?
4 would be better for me, yeah.
So 5 on both days, the 15th and
Yeah,
the 30th?
the later on both days. Those are two of my worst days of the week. So Tuesday and Wednesdays are my worst days.
Okay.
Mayor, can I jump in for clarity? These are virtual for the consultant, correct, not the board?
That's correct.
What does that mean?
So we would be meeting in here, it's not virtual for the board. The consultant will be joining virtually, but it's an
Yeah.
in-person meeting.
Yeah.
I see.
I mean, I don't know, I don't pretend to know what our requirements would be for board members to join virtually also.
I would really like if Ari was here, but I don't believe we can hold a full board meeting virtually.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've heard him say that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
It's one thing if one member's zooming in, but the whole entire board can't hold a virtual meeting,
Okay.
even under closed session.
Mm-hmm.
So we would need
heard you say that.
2 to 3, one at one particular time frame, and then another. How much, Charlie? How much time he's asking?
1 hour for the
1 hour.
for the October 15th and 90 minutes for the October 30th.
So on October the 15th,
So an
2
hour
of
and a
us
half.
could meet at 4 and then at 5.
No.
No, I think
No.
we all
No.
have to be together.
We all have to be together.
All had to be. Okay.
Yeah. And you have an issue at 4?
I mean, I prefer the 4 p.m. time, but I can probably work to make the 5 p.m. I just then have to get childcare, and we already have meetings
Okay.
that week. But I mean, I can work to do that if John can come at 5 p.m.
Okay. Commissioner Oliver?
I'm fine,
You're fine?
whatever you want to do.
Okay. My granddaughter can watch Averett. She's 13.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right, so it looks like we've got consensus to meet October the 15th, starting at 5 p.m., and then October the 30th, starting at 5 p.m. as well.
Okay.
Okay?
And then on November the 15th, this is the, I'm told, no flexibility meeting for November the 15th at 2:30 p.m. And that's a 2-hour session. And I know we have a waterfront committee meeting at 1 p.m. that day.
Yeah, Commissioner Gillikin and I are going to work to change the time, I think, or shorten
Okay.
the meeting that week. We haven't decided for sure, but yes, we will likely change the time of that meeting.
Okay.
All right, good, good.
Okay.
So we're going to start that at 2:30 or 2:15 is what I think they,
2:30.
2:30.
Yeah.
All right, so November the 15th will be 2:30. Us meeting personally, and they will be meeting virtually.
Yes, ma'am.
Correct.
Okay, all right. I got excited there for a minute. Be in my pajamas. All right. Glad to clear that up. Now we're going to move on to the Island Express Ferry Service request. Who do we have for that?
You got me.
All right.
With Island Express Ferry Services, as you know, they're the concessionaire with the National Park Service currently. National Park Service is getting prepared to put a prospectus out for the next contract for the concessionaire. And Island Express Ferry Services, Mr. Aswad and his company is looking to submit a proposal and hopefully be granted the concessionaire agreement once again. It's a 10-year lease or agreement with the National Park Service. What we're really asking today of you is to commit, even though we know we have a changing waterfront, commit for 10 years, 3 spaces on the Beaufort waterfront. We know those may change location and such based on configuration, future configuration of the docking facilities. But in order to be a responsive bidder or concessionaire requester to the National Park Service, they have to indicate where they will be operating from for the 10-year of the lease. In the absence of it being located on the Beaufort waterfront, you know, there's other limited situations such as Moorhead or possibly Gallants Channel, but the request before you today is for you to consider a 10-year lease for 3 spaces for the ferry operation from the Beaufort waterfront. As opposed to a dozen or so years ago, my first life experience here, this is a little different because this is not the National Park Service driving the deal here. This is Mr. Aswad and his LLC coming forward and wanting to negotiate an equitable lease price to lease those 3 spaces over the 10-year term. He has already developed some guidelines that we could start with for contractual negotiations. I did not want to confuse the issue today where we're getting distracted by numbers in a contract versus thinking about what the envisioning of commitment to a 10-year lease. So I'll be happy to answer questions you may have. Mr. Aswad is here also if you have questions of him. And Jeff West is here, and welcome Jeff, Superintendent of Cape Lookout, is here also. So I'll be quiet and try to be responsive.
Okay, well, thank you, Charlie. Commissioner Cooper, you have any questions?
No, I have no problem with turning your lease. And, you know, I've also heard, you know, conversation about moving to Gallant Channel. And right now, that museum thing is, they haven't even broke ground on it. So, but whenever they do, if they would like to come back and amend that, but for right now, I could see them continue their do a 10-year lease in the waterfront.
Okay. Commissioner Gilligan?
I agree with Commissioner Cooper. I think the ferry service operating out of Beaufort is a great asset. I know there are some varying opinions on that and some folks who are worried about parking, but overall, I think it's a great asset as long as it continues to be Island Express Ferry Services for the purposes of providing services for park visitors only. So we wouldn't want it to turn into another business. I don't think it would, but I just want to be clear about that. I think, you know, that may spur some difficult conversations once we decide what type of dock operations we're going to do, but I'm willing to go to bat for a lease like this because I think it's very important to our town. And I think if we have a third party come in and run the docks, or if we run the docks, if that third party is doing something in the best interest of our town, then they would accept what we've come up with here.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Commissioner LoPiccolo?
I'd agree that the ferry service definitely is an asset to the town, whether it's asset downtown or asset at Gallants Channel. I think it's something that the town should be looking to have here. I have a hard time with making a commitment for this because I'd like to have the recommendations from the Waterfront Advisory Committee. I think that not understanding where we're going to be or where we're going kind of puts us in a difficult situation of really not understanding how that will interact with, say, revamping or construction and promising that property or promising those slips to the vendor. So I just don't understand, I don't really feel confident yet that I can do that. I'd like to see how much time or how if we can kind of put this off and how much time we have on this before we make any commitment.
Okay. Commissioner Piccolo? Commissioner Spiegler?
It's okay. I second what Commissioner Gillikin said. I know there are strong feelings about this on both sides. I do know there are a lot of people in the community who feel very strongly about the services that the ferry offers and the importance of the park service here. So I would be inclined to agree with Commissioner Gillikin. I guess the one question I might have, either for Charlie or if y'all can answer too, for your RFP through the government, I'm not saying this very well, so you have to apply for this concessionaire lease through the government, and like we got in our meeting materials, you have to state where it's going to be, the location. So how much, I think this gets to Commissioner Piccolo's question, how much flexibility do you have there? Why are you, I guess, bringing this to us now? Is that a good way to put that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Oswald, if you want to come up to the mic and answer the question for us. Thank you.
All right, thank you for hearing me. So in order to put in for the concession contract, we have to project what's going to happen for the next 10 years financially, a number of passengers, expenses, and so on. We can't do this if we don't know if we're going to have a dock there. We do have other options. We have options in Morehead City. We have options in Harkers Island, where we have other property in Harkers Island, not the actual Park Service at Shell Point, to run to Shackelford on the west end. So in our proposal, when we put in our proposal, we really have to know kind of where we're going to be running out of, or if we do have a lease. And that's why when I spoke to Charlie, we had put in, I think, a very fair number, and also that we would do something that has never been done. We would be responsible for the maintenance and upkeep of the docks, which is a very large expense, and that takes that off the town. And that's about it. But it is coming out hopefully soon. It's been delayed over the last year. We're still waiting for it to come out, but when it does come out, we have to be able to say, hey, we're going to be docked in Beaufort going to Shackelford West End. Now, and it hasn't come out public yet, and we don't know if it's going to be on there, but one of the requirements, supposedly through the Park Service prospectus coming out, is that it's not a requirement to sail out of Beaufort going to Shackelford Banks or departing from Beaufort. It's not going to be a requirement like it was in the original lease. And I guess, my speculation would be that if there's nothing guaranteed there, they can't tell somebody that they're going to have to run out of there if there is no dock to run out of. So, we're trying to go one step ahead and say, hey, we'd love to sail out of Beaufort. We've done very well in Beaufort. I think we bring a tremendous amount of economy to the town. However, we can't propose sailing out of Beaufort in the prospectus, in our proposal for the prospectus, if we don't have a dock. Then we're putting something false into our proposal.
George, any indication of when the prospectus may come out? Or Jeff, any? Okay.
Anytime.
Okay. What's the response time once the prospectus comes out? How long do you have to submit?
I guess it has been in the past 90 days.
Okay.
We have 90 days once it comes out to put it in, but it's not something that can come to last because this takes a tremendous amount. We've been working on this proposal for over a year now with my firm that handles this, and it's a big step to put this proposal in. It goes, there's quite a bit that has to be done. Now, this was supposed to come out a year ago, and then they gave us a year extension. My contract runs out the end of this year, December 31. I spoke with National Park Service from Atlanta, and he asked me if I would have been interested for another extension for next year, for the following year, and that's why we had signed that lease for next year. However, I can't put the proposal in saying we're going to sail from Beaufort if we don't know if we're going to sail or not. When I last spoke to him, which was about 2 weeks ago, he said it should be out in September or October, and that was the last I heard.
Okay. So if the board is inclined in a near future meeting to go along with the 10-year lease and start contractual negotiations, you're not going to have any problem in those contractual negotiations to pick up on Commissioner Gillikin's comments about, this 10-year lease is for these 3 vessels to service Harper's Island, Cape Lookout, tours, under the National Park Service program.
It would go to, yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, and we couldn't put in for it, like I say, we can't say we're gonna, because then I'm putting a false statement in my proposal that
Yeah.
we're gonna be sailing if we don't know if we can sail from there.
Okay, so I guess we have a little bit of time, but it seems like, we have some general consensus on the 10 years, and maybe
I haven't heard from
maybe-
Commissioner Oliver
yeah,
yet, yeah.
maybe, we can, get it to the waterfront committee too for their input, but I'm sorry to take your time.
I'm used to it.
Okay.
Well, before you do that, I just want to make sure Commissioner Spiegler was, okay. good.
Yes, thank you for that.
I
Sure,
appreciate
thank
it. Very good. All right, Commissioner Oliver.
So for clarity, George, you have an agreement in place or expectation of agreement with the National Park Service through 12/31/25.
They haven't put it out officially, and the policy with not the local Park Service, with the Park Service from Atlanta, they'll wait until the last possible second, like they did last year, to give us an extension.
So it's then I'll restate it. You have an expectation that you will be granted from the National Park Service the tour rights out there through 12/31/25.
Yes, sir.
And you have an
We've already
agree-
started booking school trips, and
So the answer is yes.
Yes,
And for clarity, you have an agreement with the town now to provide dock space for you until 12/31/25.
yes, sir.
Okay. I have one question that I didn't understand here, and I don't know whether you wrote this or who wrote it, but I still don't understand it. It says 47,000 passengers utilized Island Express ferry to visit Cape Lookout. Is that 47,000 figure Beaufort, or is that both, any and all?
No, last year we were close to 100,000 for both locations.
How many were you from Beaufort?
47,000 from Beaufort.
So that is Beaufort?
Yes.
Okay, that was a question I had.
Yeah,
I
that's-
thought it was Beaufort, but I just didn't know. If it's my time to comment after questions, I agree with Commissioner LaPiccolo. I think this is the core thing that should go to the BWAF committee. I don't think we're constrained by time. I'm very much in favor of Mr. Aswad. I've dealt with him, I know he does a good job, I'm in favor, but I think the way to do this thing is for us to send this to the BWAF committee to report back to this board under their current guideline of 12/31/24.
Any other comments?
To clarify though, do you have to apply with the Park Service before
No.
that date?
The prospectus has to be put in. If it comes out October 1st, I have October, November, until December 31st to put it in. I can't find out the last minute, naturally, because we have to change the whole proposal over and change everything we're gonna write. But I'd say by the middle of November to late November would be, sufficient time.
Of this year?
Yes,
Assuming that it comes out October 1st.
that's right.
So could we have a self-imposed deadline with BWA for like the end of October or something, so we could give
If
Mr.
we just knew when the
Oswald?
bid was gonna come out of Atlanta, we don't know. Hell,
Then
it
you
could
have
be
3
next
Yeah, I
year-
think
it could be
December
next
is
year.
obvious, too late for him.
And you have, what, 2 meetings before then? I mean, there was one this week, but 2 meetings after that?
Yes, we have 2 meetings
2 meetings
scheduled for
after.
October.
Yeah.
Excuse me?
They're talking about the waterfront committee and
Yes.
if we could bring it to them before that timeline.
All right, fine.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. All righty, so just want to make sure that it's a consensus to put it in front of the Beowulf Committee, well, you call it, but, and let them kind of give us some guidance on that as well. Okay. All righty.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now we're going to go with the update, with the Beowulf Committee and Commissioner Spiegler. We'll do
So
that.
that was a good segue. Thank
know.
you.
That's right.
Well,
Your
first
list
of all,
gets longer.
so I want to say thank you to Commissioner Gillikin, who gave an update at our last meeting. I was unable to attend due to family emergency reasons. So I think she's already given an update from our first meeting, which was September 5th. I do want to make this update that we have our second Beaufort Waterfront Operations and Finance Committee meeting, or as we call it, BWOLF. Our second meeting is this coming Thursday at 1 p.m. here in the train depot on the other side, and everybody in the public is welcome to attend if they would like. We had a really good turnout last time. We had the agenda sent out to the Sunshine List today, so thank you, Rachel, for that. We are going to hear updates in the meeting on Thursday about finance, construction, and operations. And the committee recognizes that the more money and capital we have up front, the more leverage the town is going to have with whatever option we do choose going forward. So we know that the more money we obtain up front is, the best option for the town. And so this is just a short update, but I wanted to, we've talked about giving regular updates to the Board of Commissioners about the work of the committee. And I would like to open up the floor to the board tonight just to reach a consensus that the committee is proceeding with these steps to investigate financial options. Our committee member, Dexter Matthews, who is researching our financing options, he gave a presentation in our first meeting about financial options, including grants, donations, and legislative appropriations, and the process of seeking funding. And we're expecting to hear an update from Dexter this Thursday as well. So I just wanted to get a consensus that, the board is supportive of seeking funding through these different options that Dexter has outlined, understanding, the more money that we have, the better leveraged we're gonna be. So just wanted to, if anybody had any questions about that.
Commissioner Cooper?
No.
Commissioner Gilligan? Commissioner LoPiccolo?
Yeah, I guess I'd want to understand each of those financial options, the possibility of each of the options, and the time frame that each of them would take before I would, say yes. If one is going to take 3 to 5 years, and there's a 20% chance that we're going to get that, then it may not be the best option. So I guess I'd want to understand that regarding it.
Okay. And I believe that's what he's kind of working on, giving you a comprehensive
Yes, and
report.
thank you. Yes, John, that's a really good point, and I think that's exactly what we want to hear from the board, that we want this information presented to us, right? So we want to make sure that the committee is going in the right direction. The board wants to hear about these options, including grants, including possible donations and legislative appropriations. We just want to make sure that, we're bringing this to the board in a timely fashion and that we should continue this research.
Carry on, I guess, with the
Carry on.
research. All righty, very good. Commissioner Oliver?
The only suggestion I would have is you're talking about considering and discussing and trying to gain different alternatives and their probabilities, which, to use Commissioner LoPiccolo's comment, before you do that, I think you have to come up with the alternatives of different designs and costs so that you know how much money you're going to ask for. So subject to that, yeah, I think the sequence makes sense, but I think the first thing you got to do is figure out if it's different alternatives of money, because different alternatives of money are going to define the need for money that you're trying to define the probabilities of obtaining. So I think, so in your logic chain, I think I presume that you've either done that or you need to do that before you go to look for money.
I would say absolutely, I agree. And we've talked about that sort of like the order of which we go in. It's almost like they have to happen at the same time. But yes, you can't ask for the money unless you know what you're asking for and how much you need. So I absolutely agree. I think we've also talked about how much money do we need? When do we need it? Can we do this on a phased approach as well? So even if we need $15 million, I'm just throwing a number out there, do we need it all? What is the timeline of when we need that as well? So yes, that is definitely part of the research process. Thank you.
Yeah, and just re-emphasizing one piece that Sarah just described is prioritization of construction. So what order construction has to happen in, that's another factor of that.
And phasing.
Mhm. Yeah.
All right. Sounds like you're on a good path. Got a great board.
Yes, so we have a meeting scheduled for this Thursday, and then we do have 2 meetings scheduled, October, November, and December. We do need to go look at the, I believe, second meeting in November, just because it's conflicting with this manager search meeting. So I think we could probably get a consensus on that on Thursday and update the schedule as needed.
Okay.
But yes, we encourage anybody who wants to attend our meetings to please come join us. Commissioner Gillikin, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, and just a reminder that if you do join us, there's not a public comment period, but please send us your thoughts via email or catch us otherwise.
All right. Well, great job. Any further questions from the committee chair and vice chair? All right. Well, thank you very much. Now we're going to move on to our added item. With a lot of the rain that we've had coming our way, and flooding has always been the concern for a coastal town, particularly Front Street and Professional Park Drive. Commissioner Cooper had wanted to ask for an update about the Professional Park Drive area stormwater inventory and flood study as to where we are with that.
I'm going to ask Sam Bell, the town engineer, to come forward and give you an update on that.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
Here to give a update on the Professional Park stormwater study. This is a grant-funded study that started back in December of last year, and so far it's been going on according to schedule. They've completed the survey phase and asset inventory, and from that have completed their modeling efforts. So we've got a good stormwater model. Since that model's been completed, we've had a couple of rain events since then where we actually got to test out the model, and it looks like it's working as planned. Or reflecting the actual conditions pretty well. The beauty of that model is from that they can plug in different solutions to see what might work the best and plug it into the model first before they go with the design. So that'll be the next phases, the next couple of months with the initial report and initial preliminary designs coming out at the end of October, at which point the staff and we get to review those and bring them to you as well. Also, with the final report scheduled to come out at the end of November. So at that point, those will all be made public, and also with those deliverables will be a web forum, or a web where citizens can go and see the proposed solutions and see what effects those might have on the area. And just to remind you, the final plans for this will be 30% construction plans, and assistance in receiving grant funding for some of those.
Can you say the last sentence again? I can't hear you.
Sure. The final deliverables will include a final report that includes 30% design plans, which and assistance with financing efforts. So grant funding, looking at possible financing efforts for those proposed solutions.
So grant suggestions is what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
So, yeah, do you have any questions on the study?
Okay.
Or how it's going?
Anything before we go to that, I think I want to hear what Charlie has to say about that too.
Once we get the draft report, and more importantly, the final report, and we disclose that to this board and such, what I've kind of sprung on staff is the next thing I'm going to try to promote, if y'all are supportive of this, is a neighborhood meeting, and locate that meeting in one of the churches or Tiller School or something like that, and basically do a direct mail to the homes within the study area, letting them know of the meeting, date, time, location, and then not that we're going to necessarily be there as a staff and as a consulting engineer to tell them what we're going to do, but we're going to tell them what we found and what the potential solutions are, at least so they're properly informed on what's going on in their neighborhood. So that would be our staff initiative moving forward, and that would be probably a December or January timeframe event.
Okay. All right, well, now let's see if anybody has any questions for either Sam or Charlie. We'll start with Commissioner Cooper.
Thank you. Thank you, Charlie, for your presentation of that. So the study has come up with some solutions, especially for Meeting Street. And you're saying that from the last series of rain that things came together?
Mm-hmm.
Of course not.
Yes, Commissioner, the overall goal of the project is to provide some potential solutions to the flooding there. What's been completed so far is a computer-based model of the area, and it's a stormwater system. So it's a complete digital model, including the surfaces and all the stormwater infrastructure there, ditches, culverts, pipes, ponds, is all in a computer model that they can plug things into to find solutions. But we're still waiting on those, the final report for those solutions, which will come out.
But you're saying the rain events kind of recently proved out some of the models as far as?
Oh, that's correct, sir.
Okay.
With those, it was good to get some real world data to plug in to the model and see if it's working, in the real world. Which was
Do you know how much water actually was ponding in that area, especially Meeting Street?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We went and measured some of those rain events in person and see if they matched the model, and they seem to match up pretty well.
So what he's saying is the model is doing a good job predicting what happens there, which is a good first step.
Yes.
Charlie, I want to thank you in terms of wanting to set up a meeting for that neighborhood so that they can, know that we haven't forgotten. I know they know that we have this study, and one resident did ask me about that, and I wasn't able to answer because I basically had no update on it as well. So I was glad to know that public meeting, and I had wanted to be holding one in that area, but it's always trying to find where to do it, and you guys gave me Tiller School. That's great. So, because I was going to put them out there on the lawn and with some hot dogs and,
We can do that too.
Oh, well, that sounds right, that sounds right.
you know.
Can we have a food truck there?
Depends whether Paul comes or not.
But right now, you
Give Paul a
cannot.
hot dog, you'll probably be all right.
So,
It's an itinerary merchant. No, you cannot.
with much of that being said, though, what are we gonna do? Because we're about to get inundated with some rain again.
Yes.
And the poor people, I mean, they, especially Meeting Street, there's one resident that I met, and I talked to a couple others. She was really stuck because her vehicle happened to be a Mini Cooper, so that's low to the ground, and she'd have been she couldn't even think about driving that car out. So what can we do, or is there anything we can do at this upcoming event?
Once again, Public Works Director Mark Eakes will contact the HOA to make certain that the pond is pumped down. We understand it was pumped down before the last event a week or so ago, and that's unfortunately about the only thing we have at our disposal is making sure that pond gets pumped down so it can accept some water.
Yes, sir. I know he's been doing a great job of keeping up with maintenance on all the ditches out there. I know that's made a big difference. Keeping the pond pumped down, of course, as Charlie mentioned. So we're still being active in doing those things. But unfortunately, yeah, just the amount of rain out there has been substantial. So hopefully we get some good solutions with this study and can move forward with those for a more permanent solution.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Gilligan.
Thank you, Sam. I'm so glad to hear that the model is kind of being validated by being able to do some field checks and seeing that it's working pretty well. Does the model have an accepted amount of error that you know of, and were we within that error? I mean, it sounds positive, but I mean, can that be quantified?
Sure. Yeah. Yes, Commissioner. The model definitely has some shortcomings, being can't take into account every single possible surface out there. It's a representation of the real thing. So there's going to be some error. I don't know what exact percentage that would be, but the more we go out and verify and check it, the better we can identify some of those errors and shortcomings.
Okay, and so this data that you gathered with the rain events, are we able to immediately incorporate those field conditions into the model, or does that provide or do we have to contract additionally with the provider to get them to do that?
That's a good question, Commissioner. I'll ask them if we're gonna have access to the model after the study's completed, to further validate it. But so far it's just been me communicating with the engineer to get it updated and checked. So I can continue to do that as long as the study is active.
Okay, all right, thank you. And yeah, looking forward to hearing some of those options that come out. And you said that we'll have some preliminary design will be about 30% complete at the end of this. So then when we see grant funding, we would be asking for the rest of the design and engineering, and then implementation and the same request, I would guess.
That's correct.
Yep. Okay.
Yes.
Charlie, I really like your idea of the community meeting. I think that is going to mean a lot to the people, and I'm hoping that maybe they can provide their initial reactions to some of these solutions. It would be interesting to see how they see that working in their community. So really excited about that.
Yes,
So
I
thanks.
think the engineers on the study have indicated that they would be glad to present some information to a public forum as well, so present their findings. So
Great. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Sam.
And it would be great for the board to remember that Charlie may or may not be here, but that is something that we should really strive for, regardless of who sits as town manager. But we do have our assistant town manager who will be able to keep that on the table and in play. So have no worries about that. Commissioner LoPiccolo.
Thank you, Sam. Thanks for all that information. I just want to point out, obviously, that this is something the board has inherited. This is a problem that the town has had for, I don't know how many years now, Sharon. You've been here and for
Yes.
10 years or 15 years or so, from engineering problems that were that led to the development there and the flooding that's occurred. It's something that's taken a very long time, and I think the main, hearing from people and residents in that community, they just want to know, when is this going to be fixed? Right? I mean, the urgency is palpable in that community. People get stuck, they can't exit, they're having problems, and we're seeing that in other parts of our community too, with the amounts of rain that we've had. Do we have an idea of what type of time frame this will take? I think that's going to be a huge one of the main questions they're going to ask of us when we do meet with them, is to understand, this does take time. Obviously, this takes many steps. There's a lot of money that may have to be asked for, or by grants or loans and so forth, to help remedy this situation. But what type of time frame are we looking at to get from the point of modeling efforts to now solutions, grant writing, and final product?
Sure, that's a good question, Commissioner. With this study wrapping up towards the end of this year, I imagine we could expect about another 6 months to a year for grant funding opportunities to be pursued and final design. So I'd say about 12 more months of design and funding, and then project bid out. So it could be within a 1 to 2 year time frame to see final design turned into actual construction out there.
Okay.
That'd be my best guess, Commissioner.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Spiegler?
Thank you, Sam, and thank you, Charlie. That was actually going to be my first question, is how are we communicating with the residents? And you answered that, so that's great. Do you think any communication is needed before, that's what, 3 to 4 months from now? Or is there any communication with the residents before that? What do you think?
I know I had communication with half a dozen residents out there last week. And we could go ahead and provide an update in just a bulk mail. I think that might be the most effective. And I can work with Rachel and see what makes the most sense as far as getting the word out there. And we just want to make sure that everybody gets the same information and so on and so forth. And I guess you're probably picking up now that I like to have face-to-face meetings with community on different aspects. I think we can cut down the time frames of information dissemination and everything when we choose to do that. So yeah, we could go ahead and give an update and then tell them to be on the lookout for something later. That's a good point.
I think that would be good. But thank you, Charlie, and hopefully, well, we know that Elizabeth will be here to make sure that meeting happens. So, in the short term, I know this, as Commissioner LoPiccolo has said, this is a issue that's been going on for many years. Is there anything in the short term, so like when residents can't leave their homes, do we offer them any support or resources, or they're just sort of stuck until the water goes down? Is that a slippery slope to get into?
I'm not real sure what we could do. This, our planner can, I think, support me on this. This was a design bust from the very beginning. Meeting Street was. It isn't anything that was created with other streets being built or other developments and such. This was just a plain design bust. The design created a bowl of Meeting Street, and that bowl collects water from various areas on and near Professional Park Drive. And it was a problem when I was here for 10 years, and it's still a problem, and I'm just so pleased that there's a study that at least will give us options for how to remediate or lessen the impact there. But as far as the individual, yeah, a visitor, and yeah, she had 2 feet of water in front of her driveway. You know, how we could, you know, help with that, I'm not real sure.
But she could call, like if there was an emergency situation or she doesn't have prescription medication or something, I'm sure that we could work something out. You know, obviously if it's an emergency, we have a high water rescue vehicle and other,
I mean,
other
I parked my vehicle and walked across 6 front yards to get to her house. I didn't have to walk in the water. So it gives you an idea of how far she was from, you know, being able to maneuver out. But, you know, that was how I got to her front door.
I know exactly who you're speaking of. In fact, I left my number, told her if she had any problems, anything that arise, she can call me and I would give her whatever assistance she may need. Because she definitely had some high water there in front of her. I haven't bought it.
But it becomes just as much as a dangerous situation when you have someone who's trapped if you're trying to get to them. I mean, you don't want to try to do something unless it's an emergency or unless you have emergency support like a high water vehicle. Trying to get somebody being kind can get you into more trouble. So I probably would suggest that if they had an emergency, definitely call 911 for that support. And until then, hunker down until the water begins to recede, which you have loss of work, loss of doctor's appointments, all these things can be a hindrance to life, but we don't want anybody to do anything risky trying to get out there or to them unless they are well prepared. And we ran into that very situation when we had Florence. If it wasn't for the Las Vegas high water rescue team being here at the time, there would have been a lot of people that have been stuck because we really didn't have that high water rescue vehicle at the time. So now we're a little bit better prepared for that, but even, you know, it gets really, really dicey. And this has been, since I've been a commissioner, one of the things, every time it rains, I think of that community first. Every time it rains. Laying there in bed thinking to myself, what's going to go on, what's happening? As a matter of fact, that same day, I was talking on the phone with Commissioner Gilligan. I said, I just left my restaurant, rode around to Meeting Street, and I said, so far so good. And what, the very next day, so far was not good. I mean, it was just so much water that had come down on every part of Beaufort that there was just nowhere you can be prepared for something like that. But Commissioner Oliver, I'm going to get off my high horse and let you talk.
And the high water vehicle was contributed to this community by Mr. Aswad. I have no comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Alrighty, that seems to be the end of that discussion unless you have any further questions for Sam or Charlie on the topic. Very good work. Thank you for communicating with the citizens. I hope that we can get them some relief in my lifetime and theirs too. To make things a little bit better. And unless there's any further comments, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Got a motion on the floor. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.